Hi everybody, I'm Tabitha and I finished the last 5 books I needed to read for February. Regular watchers of this channel will already know this, but I do book reviews every time I've read 5 books. You should know that I don't read just one specific age category or genre. I'm actually a reader of pretty much anything. So I will make sure to tell you what age category, what genre it is, and more importantly, what kind of readers I think will love the book that I'm reviewing. I do use a 5-star rating system to review all my books, so I'd like to take a quick second to tell you about that system. 5-star ratings are reserved for books that I absolutely love, that I think transcend genre. In other words, you might love this one even if you don't normally read the genre it's written in. 4-star books, on the other hand, are books that I absolutely love and think are great books, but they're more specific to the genre they are written for. 3-star ratings are for books that I think are good books, but they have a really niche audience. You might not love this one, even if you normally read this genre. 2-star ratings are the ratings I reserve for books that I think are problematic. I do try to explain some of the problems in the What I Didn't Love section so that you know if it's the kind of thing that would really bother you or not. 1-star rating, on the other hand, are reserved for books that I honestly didn't enjoy and can't recommend. They're just not for me. All right, with that out of the way, let's get to the reviews. The next book I read in the month of February is The Alchemist by Paulo. This is a 1988 release by HarperCollins. It is an adult as an age category, and I would call it fantasy, and it is 182 pages. Your synopsis. Santiago, a shepherd from Spain, will follow his dream across the desert in search of a treasure buried near the pyramids. Along the way, he will listen to the omens and possibly find a treasure inside himself. So what didn't I like about this classic book that I've been told by hundreds of people I should definitely read? Well, the first thing I didn't particularly like is that this book has a very preachy tone to it. I'm not an overly religious person, so I might be more sensitive to that than other people. There are a lot of characters that Santiago meets during his journey that push their beliefs on Santiago. I wasn't a fan of that preachy, pushy tone, and it kind of irked me right from the beginning. The second thing I didn't like about this one is that there was definitely like an implied sexism in this one that I wasn't expecting. The big message or themes in this book seems to be that everyone has a big destiny and that you should follow your destiny. They call it their personal legend. Everybody has a personal legend and you should follow that personal legend. In fact, Santiago gives up a lot of other things to be able to follow his personal legend. It's a fine message and one I didn't have a problem with. Here's where I had a problem. There are 2 minor characters in the story who happen to be females. They seem to be the only 2 characters in the story who had no personal legend. When Santiago has conversations with other people about his personal legend, they tend to jump in and tell their stories, as we tend to do when we talk to each other. But the females in the story didn't jump in and tell their stories. In fact, their stories almost seem to be more, I'm waiting for someone else's story to happen. I'm waiting to find my husband and have his story happen so I can support his story. And to me, that's a huge problem. The third thing in this book that I didn't particularly like is that it really felt like it was trying too hard. I don't know how to explain that, except that that's the feeling I kept getting from this book. This book felt like it was trying too hard to deliver a message, trying too hard to put a lesson into every interaction, to load the book with symbols, and it got a little almost redundant, I think, because of that. So what did I like about this book? Well, the first thing, and this is kind of a big one for me, is that I listened to this one as an audiobook, and it's narrated by Jeremy Irons. I'm a big fan of Jeremy Irons. I think he has a great voice for storytelling, and I loved that he was narrating this audiobook. The second thing I liked about this story is that the lessons and the message that we were trying to deliver were good overall. I do believe we have some kind of personal narrative in life that we should be working towards, and I thought that was really neat to explore. It had the makings of a very good inspirational story. So who do I think should read this one? I think if you are an overly religious person, or if you like religious messages, you might like this more than I did. I also think if you enjoy parables, tales, or fables that have clear-cut morals and that tell those stories in interesting ways to make the lesson obvious, you may like this one, maybe even more than I did. My rating for this one, I said 2 stars. For me, the implied sexism was a huge problem, making this book problematic, and I give problematic books 2 stars. So 2 stars for The Alchemist by Paulo. The next book I read in the month of February was Kingdom Come by Jim Doran. This is a 2018 release. It is independently published with Lulu Publishing. It's a young adult fantasy book, and it is 348 pages. I was given a copy of this electronic story by the author in exchange for an honest review. Your synopsis. Harold Trey is preparing for college when he's visited by an apparition who convinces him to follow her to a faraway world. There, he will find he's the subject of a prophecy, and he will need all of his knowledge of fairy tales if he has any chance of fulfilling it. So what didn't I like about this one? Well, I first need to say that I'm nitpicking here. This book was very well done, but I like to make sure I give you honest things that could have been done better, so I nitpicked to find them. One of those nitpicky things that I didn't like about this one is the age of the main character didn't seem to fit at the beginning of the story. This book opens feeling like a middle grade, but the main character's 17. So that threw me off a little. It felt like an imbalance because that's an age you'd normally see in YA. I should mention, however, that this feeling goes away rather quickly. The main character's age seems to make sense later, and in fact, by the end of the book, I was perfectly happy that this had been a YA story. The other thing I can say I didn't like was the cover. And I think the cover may have led some of my confusion because I feel like it looks like a middle grade cover. But again, this is a young adult story, and the fact that it's young adult makes sense, but I just wasn't crazy about the cover. I will say when I stopped judging by the cover, I genuinely, seriously love this story. So really, I guess you shouldn't judge books by their cover. So what did I like about this one? Well, the first thing I can say I liked is that this book explores fairy tales in an amazing, wonderful way. So it sort of reminds me of that show Once Upon a Time, or 10th Kingdom. It was a made-for-TV movie, 10th Kingdom. Sort of reminds me of that. It's playing around with fairy tales and using fairy tales in an interesting and different way. What I liked about this one is that it doesn't use the Disney-fied versions of those fairy tales. So it used other ones that I'm familiar with because I'm a big, passionate fairy tale person. So I really enjoyed seeing those used correctly and using less common fairy tales for the stories. That was great. The next thing I can say I liked about this one is that it's really well written. The language and the characters in this story are very well written and have a lot of depth. I think I would gladly hand this book to a teenager to read because they would have fun with the topic, and yet the language is well done. So I feel like they'd learn something and it would push them a little, and I really liked that. The other thing I can say I liked about this one, and I sort of hinted at it before, is there is a lot of variety here. The characters are all very different from each other, so I feel like that was a fun variety. They're not all the same type of character. The other variety I alluded to earlier was that this is a different group of fairy tales than you necessarily have heard. So of course some of your big ones do feature, because what would a fairy tale book be without them? But I liked seeing the other ones interjected. That really made me happy. So who do I think should read this one? If you're a fan of stories that play around with fairy tales, you do not want to miss this book. It will give you something you're looking for that you haven't seen before. The other kind of readers I think would enjoy this one is if you are a fan of reluctant hero stories. This one is well done and spins the trope just enough to make it different. My rating overall, I said 4 stars. This one will appeal to fantasy readers who like their fantasy to build on fairy tale characters. It will also appeal to the reluctant hero fantasy people. I just think overall this is a solid fantasy book that you should be reading if you're a fantasy fan. 4 stars for Kingdom Come by Jim Doran. The next book I finished for the month of February is Don't Check Out This Book by Klise and Sarah Klise. It's a children's contemporary story. It's coming out in March of 2020, so this was an advanced reader copy, and it's coming to you by Algonquin Young Readers. This book is 160 pages. I did receive this electronic advanced reader copy from NetGalley and the publisher in exchange for an honest review. Your synopsis. Appleton Elementary School has a brand new librarian, although they don't have a library. The new school board director has implemented a new dress code policy, which includes items only sold at her shop. As things start to get a little tense, the 5th grade reporters are on the case. So what didn't I like about this one? Well, the first thing I can say I didn't like is that this book does not work well as an ebook. Like I mentioned, I got an electronic advanced reader copy of this book from the publisher. I wouldn't recommend it as an ebook. This is gorgeous images. They are fun and colorful and I love them, but I do not think they translated well to the ebook. The second thing I can say I wasn't particularly crazy about, and this is just because I'm sensitive to books that get marketed wrong, is that this book is really lower middle grade. So sometimes when we say middle grades, we mean middle schoolers, and sometimes you mean upper elementary. This book is definitely upper elementary. I can't see a lot of kids being happy with this one on their own if they were to choose it from middle school, but this is definitely a younger middle grades book. And that's nitpicky things I just gave you. And the only reason I give you those is, again, because I like to make sure I give you something that maybe I didn't love. So what did I like about this book? Well, first of all, the names of the characters in this book are just adorable. They're all kind of puns and plays on the characters' personalities. They're fun to read out loud. They're just awesome. I really, really like that. This actually would be a great classroom read aloud story because not only the names, but the language really lends itself to be read out loud. The next thing I can say I liked about this one is that there are big life lessons packed into this one. It deals with censorship, personal style, no access to materials at schools, corrupt financial backers, and more. This is all wrapped up and buried behind cute puns and a fun story that kids are going to love. The third thing I can say I love about this one is the format of this story. So this story is told as a series of letters, emails, newspaper articles, demerits, things like that. Nothing that's really a traditional chapter. And teachers, you're going to be so happy to hear that there are formal letters with proper formal letter headings, which is just going to, I mean, that lesson plan writes itself. That's awesome. So the format of this was fun, it was entertaining, and it was different enough from other things that are available to middle grade students right now. Who do I think should read this one? Look, friends, if you are a 4th through 6th grade teacher right now teaching reading, when this book comes out, you're going to want to get at least one classroom copy because I'm telling you, this will fast become your favorite group read along. Grab a copy, grab multiple copies, and just get ready because I think I came up with like 10 on-the-fly lessons around this book just on my first read through. You need a copy of this if you're teaching 4th through 6th grade. Who else do I think should read this one? Well, if you're a kid who likes stories about students standing up for what they believe in, you're going to love this book. My rating, I had no choice but to go 5 stars for this one. This is a solid middle grade book that has big themes, and it's going to appeal to any reading teachers or kids who like stories about strong kids. Plus, this title is awesome. So, 5 stars for Don't Check Out This Book by Kate and Sarah Klise. All right, watchers, you just heard me give this book 5 stars. That means if you have a book that you think is similar to this book, please make sure you drop the name of the book and the author down below in the comments because I'll be choosing books based on this one for next month's TBR. This next book was the book on my TBR with the highest reader average on Goodreads. The next book I read in the month of February was The Chronicles of Henny, Volume 2 by Kerri Davidson. This was independently published in 2018. It is adult as an age category and humor or comic book as a genre, and it is 74 pages. This book was the book on my TBR with the highest average reader rating before this month started. I actually won this book in a giveaway the author herself was hosting on Twitter, so I'm really excited to be able to get this review there for her. Your synopsis. Henny, the drunken, foul-mouthed chicken, is back. And this time, he's bringing all his old friends and a few new ones. So what didn't I like about this one? Well, the first thing I can say I didn't like, and actually I didn't have a problem with this, call this a content warning. It's a content warning for anybody who might have a problem with it. If you're offended by cursing, bathroom humor, drinking, jokes about sex, you should probably avoid this one. You've been warned. So what did I like about this one? The first thing and the biggest one is that Henny makes me laugh. He's just like an old go-to comic. You know, you have your favorite comedy specials that you just turn on when you feel like laughing. That's Henny. Yes, I've heard some of the jokes before, but the delivery and the way that these books are written without any apologies or any holds barred just makes me laugh, and I love it. Second thing I like about this one is that in my rating of the first book in this series, I mentioned that some of the words, because they're squeezed into the bubbles, were a little hard to read. I don't know, Kerri probably didn't hear this or watch that before she wrote the second one, because I'm pretty sure the second one was already out when I did that video, but problem is fixed in this one. I had absolutely no problem reading any of it. Everything was clear and everything was awesome. The next thing I liked about this one is I can say that the new characters in this one are great. I love Stinky. I love the psychiatrist. They're good additions to the cast, and I seriously hope they're in book 3 because I have book 3. Basically, this book is an all-around quick read that's exactly what you're promised. It's funny. You'll laugh at it. Sometimes it's ridiculous. It's definitely for adults, but who said we don't need adult comic books? We definitely do, and I love that Kerri's giving it to us. Who do I think should read this one? Well, first of all, if you're an adult who likes to laugh and you're not easily offended, go grab yourself a copy of any of the Henny books. They do not have to be read in order, so go ahead, start with volume 2. I won't tell. Overall, my rating for this one, I said 4 stars. This book is exactly what you were promised by the author on her website and everywhere she talks about it. It's going to make you laugh, and it's a fast, quick read. You can't go wrong with it. So 4 stars for The Chronicles of Henny, volume 2 by Kerri Davidson. The last book I read in the month of February, which I believe happens to be number 13 for February, number 5 for this video, is Flowers for Algernon by Daniel Klise. This is a 1966 release by Harcourt, Brace and World. They were the original publishers. It is 311 pages, and it is classified by the publisher as young adult science fiction. I should mention this book originally appeared in a magazine as a short story in the 1950s. Your synopsis. Charlie Gordon, a man with a low IQ, will undergo the same scientific procedure as Algernon, a lab mouse. The experiment will give them a high IQ and possibly change life as they know it. But when Algernon's experiment begins to fail, Charlie has to wonder if the same thing will happen to him. So what didn't I like about this one? Well, like so many of you, I originally read the short story version of this one, the made-for-school version of this one, and not the long version. This was my first time reading the long version. So I can say that it shocked me a little how much we dig into Charlie's background and how many more scenes involve almost sort of an adult or sexual nature theme to them. I just wasn't expecting it. The second thing I can say I didn't particularly like about this one is that the way people treat Charlie at the start of the book and in his memories as he starts to unlock those memories, it makes the book hard to read a few times. I'm not saying it's not important. It is important. It's important when Charlie notices it. It's important when Charlie doesn't, but it's hard to read. The third thing I can say I didn't like about this book, and this is probably a personal thing, I have a knee-jerk, like instant reaction to some words that were used in this book. The big ones, stupid is one that I can overlook, but I really have a problem with the word retarded, and that it's used a lot in this book, so for me that was like, it just kept coming up. But that's a personal thing, I think. So what did I like about this one? This book is a classic for a lot of reasons. It's not necessarily for the story itself, although I do think that's an intriguing bit of science fiction. It's because the way the author weaves the differences into the language, the vocabulary, and the sentence structure of Charlie as the book progresses. You can open this book to the beginning and open it to the middle and open it to the end, and it's almost going to seem like it was written by a different person, but it's supposed to. So I think part of the genius that is this book is the way that language and sentence structure changes. It's masterful. You have no doubt what's happening to Charlie's IQ just by looking at how that writing changes from page to page. The second thing I can say I liked about this one is that the themes in this book are amazing. You experience big questions about whether or not IQ makes a person easier to relate to, whether we truly treat people differently because of things like IQ. Do we even treat people as human beings when we see them as being different than us? We see how frustrating it can be to be different, but more importantly, how frustrating it can be to realize that you are different. The retelling of Charlie's story, like the memories that flash back and Charlie retells that story, things that he's unlocking or realizing. It's a chance for Charlie to be introspective and to learn about himself. And that presents something that many novels don't give their main characters. So that was interesting. The other thing I can say I liked about this one is that the format for this one is perfect for the story that's being told. The entire novel is written as journal entries from Charlie's point of view. There is no other way this story could have been told to capture the full emotion and the message and that introspection the author was going for. So really, this book is a classic for those reasons. And that's the reason why it keeps getting studied in school, I think. It's a master study in those things. So who do I think should read this one? There is a reason why teachers keep handing scenes of this one to kids in high school. There is a reason why we keep studying it in literature circles. There are things to unpack here. There are things to learn here. There are big messages here. So do I think this book doesn't have problems? No. But I think everyone could benefit from taking time to read this one, even if you remember reading the short one in high school. My rating, overall, I had no choice but to go 5 stars for this one. I had to really think about it, actually, in relationship to my rating system, because I thought, is this going to appeal to a wider range of people? And then I realized it's marketed as young adult science fiction, and it also appeals to people who want inspirational stories, people who want almost contemporary stories, even though I realize it's getting older than it used to be. But I think, yes, this book is going to appeal to many people. And I really think the fact that long after I closed it and walked away from it, this one's going to keep resonating with me means that I have no choice but to give this 5 stars. I just think people should be reading this one. You're going to have it stick with you, whether you love it or not, long after you close those pages. So I'm giving 5 stars to Flowers for Algernon by Daniel Keyes. All right, watchers, you just heard me give this book 5 stars. That means if you have a book that you think is similar to this book, please make sure you drop the name of the book and the author down below in the comments, because I'll be choosing books based on this one for next month's TBR. Okay, that is it for me and the last of the books that I read in February, bringing my February total to, I think, 13. Thank you for being here. You guys are amazing. Drop a comment to let me know you're still here. Hit subscribe and tap that little bell so you know when I'm back. Keep plotting the path to your own dreams, and I will see you next time. Bye!